All right, so welcome to the show today. Today I have Nazir Esmail on the show, and he's a regional CIO at Polaris Industries. And I'm very excited to talk to you today about your story, some of the lessons you learned along the way, and then eventually also talking about transformation leadership, basic leadership in times of change. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be on. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. So let's dive right into your story. Tell us a little bit about who are you, and then a little bit about the journey that got you to where we are today. Maybe there've been some defining moments that you feel really shaped you as a person, as a human being along the way.
Yeah, so let's maybe start at the beginning. So I'm originally from Portugal. So Portuguese is my native language, and it's where I was born and raised. And I did my college education, university in the U.S. in Boston, which was great. And then after, like many people, I was unsure what I wanted to do, so I took the easy path and I went to consulting because you can more or less find your way in consulting. And I went specifically into IT consulting. So I worked for Oracle, which is a very big, U.S. IT company, and that was really a great experience for me because I got to see many different customers, industries, and it kind of got me to understand what I really enjoyed. And what I really enjoyed is using technology as a way to enable business strategy, business goals, business objectives, always with the technology lens. And I could see the benefit that this was giving the companies. And then ultimately through my journeys, it led me to Switzerland, where I'm now, where I'm based now, and to Polaris. So I've been with Polaris for 5 years now, and my responsibility, as you said, is running the IT and IS. We actually call it digital and IS practices for everything outside the US, essentially. And it's a journey. Polaris is a company that's across many different products and product lines, and a lot of diverse base from customer standpoint. And so there are always new challenges. There are always things that we can do better and things that we can do to improve the customer experience, which is always at the top of our mind. And this still keeps me, very much motivated and engaged with using technology as a business enabler.
Interesting, really interesting things that you mentioned in terms of the overlay of business and technology, and maybe we're going to go into that a bit more in a second. But what I'm really interested in is, I guess, the underlying piece of that, which is what it is that it drives you, the why behind what you do, basically. Do you see a common thread? Do you see some, red line throughout your career that is what is sort of like the commonality for you that really inspires you to get up every morning, get out of bed and do the work you do?
Yeah. This is a great phrasing of the question. In the old days, people used to say, "What keeps you up at night?" I prefer this approach, which is what gets you up in the morning. It has a more positive outlook on things. And really it's, from the beginning of my career, like I mentioned, I was at Oracle and we were implementing big systems in big companies. And these are projects which were multi-million-dollar projects, which took, 12 months, 18 months, very long projects. And the satisfaction for me personally was when the project was, let's say, we went live, and you sort of walk around the offices at the customer site and you see all these people using the software that you helped to design and implement, and you see their job getting easier, them being able to connect even different departments which sometimes never talk to each other, or even with customers. And I've always taken this view that IT, this ivory tower IT, where people sit in their desk and just start programming all day, it's not the modern type of IT. So what drives me is the satisfaction of people using the technology that we build, that we implement, and then the value that comes out of it, right? Today we talk a lot about digital transformation. For me, if I sort of boil this down very simply, it's all about removing friction and barriers using technology. If you're able to do this, at the end, you'll have a happy customer. When you have a happy customer, life is good.
I like that one. If you have a happy customer, life is good. I like that. And I like that, especially coming from somebody who comes from technology,
Yeah.
because, I mean, Yeah, okay. Every company is working towards. I feel like it's working towards the, business IT. I guess, and there's some a bit more along the journey, and others a little bit less. But the way you say it to me sounds very, I guess, business focused in a way. So that's I really like that. Another thing I want to dive a little bit more into is your journey, of course, and you've had some experiences along the way, and probably some interesting successes, and then some failed attempts and everything in between. So, what I'm really curious about is some of the lessons that you learned along the way, and maybe we can dive into one or two specific ones. If you would just have to pick one for to get started, one that really made an impression on you, that you learned along the way. Could you share that, and could you dive a little bit more into the story behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sort of circumvent the question and give you two examples because they were very career defining, if you will. So the first one, it has to do on this outlook and how to look at business from an IT standpoint with the customer in mind. Like I said, when I was implementing big systems, 18-month projects, there were ERP systems. The customer is not at the top of your mind. It's really an internal project. It's, you want to help finance, you want to help supply chain, operations, manufacturing, but you don't really think about the end customer. It's not top of mind. And it's really about, let's hit that milestone, let's hit that budget. That's what we're driving. And even if we have to cut some corners here and there and not provide an excellent product. And this was the beginning of my career. And then as I evolved and I actually went to work for a medical company before Polaris, it was Stryker. The mission of the company was about making healthcare and making patient outcomes more successful. And I started to think about this in my career. Actually, our customer is not the hospital, it's not the doctor, it's actually the patient. And then when you in healthcare, I felt this becomes even more critical. How do we make sure that, patients, when they go into a hospital, they have a good experience? It's already stressful as it is going to a hospital, and if they're going for a surgery or what have you, how can we enable it to be a better experience? And I started seeing things in a different light. Started seeing things from the customer standpoint. They come into a hospital, it's maybe traumatic, you have nurses, you have all these different hospital systems, you have your own data which you want to keep as private somehow. At the same time, you want to share it so that they can make informed decisions. And this really formatted my view and saying, okay, the customer should be at the center of everything. And today, nobody has all the answers, but when I'm faced with tough decisions, I always think about, is there a value that we're going to offer to the customer by making decision A or B? And 9 times out of 10, you'll make the right decision if you think about the customer. There will be times when, of course, you're wrong, like everybody. But if you think about the customer, the probability is much, much higher. So this was a big career-defining moment for me when I thought about the customer, especially at Stryker, when I thought about the patient. And now at Polaris, we make products for people to live outdoors. Our motto is think outside. We make off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, boats, motorcycles. And when you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, they want to buy their product. They want to be able to enjoy it. They want service and warranty to just work. They want to have routes. They want to have trails. They want to share with friends. So all this is about the customer. And this has really, I think, allowed me and my team to deliver, very good capabilities that have allowed the business to achieve business objectives. So this was one, let's say, defining moment for me. And the other one, if you'll allow me, was I've had the opportunity to work in several different countries, mainly project-based, but for long durations. And one of the things I've learned is, the world is a very small place, but not everybody's the same. So I had the chance to spend quite a lot of time in Japan, and it's a great country, great people, but culturally it's very different from my background, from Portugal, from Europe, from Switzerland. And one thing that I learned, I was there in the first meeting, we were using a translator, and my counterpart from the business was sort of the VP for operations, and we were asking questions, and he was saying, hi, hai, which means yes in Japanese. And I thought, this is going great. He agrees with everything. And then the translator said, no, actually, he's saying, yes, I understood what you said. I heard what you said. I'm going to go back and think about it. And I said, oh, okay. So this was this cultural awareness that, even though the world is very small, then you can go from Japan to Switzerland in, 10 hours or whatever, hop on a flight and you're there. Culturally, we're all very different. And this cultural sensitivity is super, super important to be able to be very efficient and to be very collaborative, basically. It's very important. And you can remove a lot of barriers just by listening, understanding, and trying to understand what the other team is trying to say.
So interesting. I mean, both of these. I mean, the first one is in terms of decision making. This, like in the center of decision making is the customer. Which is should we do that? Should we do that? Well, what's more valuable to the customer? And then that's the decision. Or about the product, about changes, or whatever. That's a really interesting one. And I guess it's like, if you look at it, it's like, oh, that's logical. But then actually applying that thinking, that's a different story, right? Because it's so easy not to think about the customer when you make decisions. That's easy. It's much harder to always keep that in mind and then also make difficult decisions, and make difficult decisions or make the right decisions in difficult times. So that's an interesting one. The other one as well, when it comes to culture, and especially as a sub part of culture, sort of a communication, between or across cultures, because it is so fundamentally easy to make, to have misunderstandings, to not really, to assume that you understand. That's even worse, to assume that you understand and not ask and not ask and sort of like risk to look stupid. Because of course, you should understand that, right? What it means. Really, really interesting pieces. I want to talk, and I guess we go sort of like in a nice flow here, because to me, it kind of leads into obviously the leadership topic when we talk about culture, communication, diversity, different people as part of the same group and everything. Talk to me a little bit about leadership, but leadership in times of change. I call it transformational leadership, but in general, basically, leadership when things are changing. Well, right now we have a pretty changing time, right? We have a pretty changing world. In general, when you lead, when you step in as a leader in times of change, how do you tackle change? Is there a certain playbook you have? Is there a certain methodology you start with? How do you get started when you come in and take a leadership role, basically?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic, and change and leadership. It's simple, but it's not. So when I mean it's simple, is the fundamentals to be able to be successful. Everybody knows them, and everybody can do them, but they're extremely difficult to do because we're not robots. We're people, and people have emotions, people have sensitivities, people have thoughts, people have backgrounds, and everybody has a different background. What I mean by the fundamentals are easy is, I had a boss once that he had a very big organization, and he took the time to meet with everybody. And one thing individually when they started with the company, and one thing that he said to everybody is, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, or you're out of here. You don't have a place here. And transformation. We hope everybody does this, but don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. So don't lie. So be honest. This is foundational. There's a question, when I hire people, there's a question that I like to ask everybody. And I sort of ask, if you have to summarize yourself in one word, what would that word be? And people who say they're honest, I appreciate that immensely. But I kind of say, well, honesty, that's sort of a core principle that everybody should have. That shouldn't be your best quality. That should be everybody's quality. So please try again. And I'm looking for certain keywords, which, I can dive into those if you're interested. But so to me, when there's a transformation, the best thing in my experience has been, be honest, be transparent, be direct. Sometimes transformations are difficult because, like we said, it's change, and people, generally speaking, don't like change. There's some resistance. People struggle to see what's the end goal, and sometimes at the leadership level, we can't explain everything. Maybe there are some things which are confidential, but if you're honest, if you're transparent, if you're direct, that's half the battle. The second is try to, just like we put ourselves in the feet of our customer when we're doing an internal transformation, is put ourselves in the feet of the people who are impacted. What does it mean for them? Usually people ask, what's in it for me? So let's ask, what's in it for you? What's going to happen with this change? Is your role going to change? Is your job going to change? Is your location going to change? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get different? If you sort of think about this when you're thinking about how to communicate the transformation that's going to happen, I believe you're able to articulate a good message. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be on board. Transformation is not about getting consensus. It's about steering the ship in the direction that we think is the right one, and there will be things that don't work out. That's life. But if you're honest, if you're transparent, if you're direct, people will appreciate that. People will accept it, and people will generally speaking will understand why the transformation needs to occur. So those are sort of the playbook, if you will, that I try to employ. Sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, but by and large, that's how I try to do it.
I really like it. When I get playbook, or basically, I really like that you formulated it as part of principles. It's basically core principles, and one of them is honesty. And I had an interesting conversation with another CIO a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this, and he said something along the lines of honesty creates transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really interesting. And I think you put them together as well, obviously, because they are very close. But I find it interesting, sort of like how they play together, because transparency is a very difficult concept because it's not tangible, really. You can't be like, being transparent is like nobody really knows what that means. Like, you're not people are not suddenly going to be able to look through you.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a bit of a difficult concept. But then being honest, I think that's a pretty clear message, right? Yeah. It's basically, it means what it's not, and it's measurable in a sense what it is. So I really, really like that. My question to you would be like, I want to elaborate more. When you bring people on board, what are the core characteristics, or what are the core abilities or characteristics in people beyond skills, but what makes them who they are? What are the key things you're looking for beyond honesty?
So there are a couple, I think. So when I look at things, maybe people tend to say I'm analytical, so I don't like surprises, good or bad. I do like things to run, a bit like the Swiss trains. We like them to run on time, right? I would say that what I really value in my peers and my colleagues and my teammates and my direct reports and my managers is the fact that we have something that we call say-do ratio. Do you do what you say, and do you say what you do? Right? It's okay to say, I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to commit to this timeline, rather than saying I'm going to do it and then don't get it done because it was too aggressive. So to me, it's important to have a high say-do ratio, even if and it goes back to honesty, be direct and say, listen, you're asking me to get this done by tomorrow. I'm sorry, but it's impossible. I can probably do it by Friday or by Monday of next week. And I'm being honest with you. And when I commit, we'll deliver. And why is this important? Not only the honesty aspect, but the reliability and credibility. So in this new world where a lot of people are working from home, those that are fortunate to work from home, it's important that people are credible and reliable. A lot of people say, well, why can't I work from home? Yes, you can work from home. And if you can feel that you are more focused and you can work better, that's great. Just deliver on your commitments. If you're going to promise to do something, then just do it. And surprises happen, right? I mean, the unknown is unknown, right? I worked for a long time as a consultant at an aircraft maintenance facility. And when they open an aircraft engine, they have this thing that they say, okay, we know what you're coming in for. You're coming in because you're on the 15,000 hour cycle, and so we need to do some maintenance. That's what we know. Once we open up the engine, we find the unknowns, right? We know there are unknowns. We just don't know what the unknowns are. So it's fine if things move, if things slip, that's fine. If you're honest, if you're credible and reliable, it's sort of a no-brainer in the organization that people will say, okay, Daniel's got it. He said he's going to do it. He's got it. And if something unexpected happens, he's going to be honest to raise his hand and say, listen, we found a challenge. I need more funding, or I need more resources, or I need an extended timeline, whatever the case may be. The technology doesn't work as we expected, and we'll figure it out together. Those to me are the successes of a very well-oiled and productive organization. When everybody's able to be credible, reliable, honest. The technology, I tend to say the technology is the easy piece. It's the people, that sort of make it difficult. And if we can all do our part to make it easy, then it's great.
I like the way you phrase it as a say-do ratio. And there's lots of other words, but this is the most descriptive, I would say, that I've heard so far. I like that a lot. And the way you expressed it as well in practical terms, I think is powerful, because it's easy to talk about concepts, but it's like, it's more valuable to talk about practical applications of things like that. And to me, it's an interesting difference, or like keeping your word is such a expression of that, right? So keeping your word. And I find that interesting because it plays out in two ways, in a sense. On one is basically, you say something and then you go about doing it, but that's always the starting point only, right? But then naturally stuff goes wrong, stuff doesn't work. And I think the more powerful piece is then keeping your word, in terms of then stepping up and saying, well, it's not going to work, and here's what we need to change it, or saying, I can't make that commitment, and simply speak up and say, and speak that you're not. Actually, saying that you're not able to keep your word is as strong as keeping your word by default. That's what I find really interesting as a nuance, because the first one is easy in a sense, but it's more difficult because stuff always goes wrong. Stuff Absolutely. Is, along the way. So that's a really interesting one. I want to talk a little bit more about the journey of change, right? So there's a starting point. You get kicked off. You get the people on board. You get the buy-in. And you get moving. And now stuff, doesn't work the way it should. It takes longer than it should. It costs a lot more than it should, and everything, right, happening. Yeah. How do you, along the way, two things. How do you keep the buy-in from the stakeholders, like, the sponsors, the top management? And on the other side, how do you keep people engaged on the team so that, keep being there with their A game, keep showing up with their full self every day?
Yeah. So I think when we communicate upwards, so like to stakeholders and sponsors, I think, well, firstly, obviously, like we've been saying, it's important to be open and transparent. But the other trick that I like to employ, and I like my teammates and my colleagues to employ as well, is never go only with a problem. You go with a problem and solutions. Hopefully one solution, but sometimes two solutions or three, and you give them a choice. If you go with one solution, it means you've put enough thought process into it, and you're going with a recommendation. You're saying, listen, I've thought through this. We have this challenge. I've thought through this. This is how we move forward. This is what I'm recommending. Do I have any blind spots? That's a perfectly acceptable question, right? I've thought through this. The team thought through this. We think this is the recommendation. Are there any blind spots in our thinking that we shouldn't go down this path? So when you go speaking to sponsors and you have to give bad news, like everybody probably has had to do at least once, go with a solution or go with options, because you're basically, what you're doing is you're valuing the time of your sponsors. I don't like, for instance, everybody has a boss, right? I don't like to give my boss a problem and say, figure it out for me. It should be the other way around, right? Here's the problem. Here's the solution I'm proposing. I've thought through this, and this is what I recommend. And then what I'm looking for is, do I have any blind spots? And if not, can we move ahead in this direction? So this is super impactful because I'm respectful of the time of my sponsors, of my stakeholders. They appreciate this and they say, okay, this team has put effort into designing a way out of the situation we're in, whatever the situation is, right? The difficult situation. So that's one thing. Now the team which are sort of in the trenches, in the war day to day, especially on very difficult or complex or long projects, the motivation and we'll have ups and downs, right? This is life. And I think what's worked well, especially early in my career when I was doing big ERP programs, which they're multi-million-dollar, multi-year projects. What works well is being able to take a step back, not only having these happy hours that people like to have, or having or whatever, but taking a step back and say, okay, why are we doing this? We're doing this because of A, B, C, D. And usually rebaselining on the mission will help people to then reconvene, build the bridges again if some were broken, and then momentum will rise again usually. And it's difficult because the leadership of the project, the program, the initiative, whatever, has to be the one saying, okay, guys, let's take a step back, let's think about this, let's see what we're doing, what can we do differently, and then let's re-engage again. And when you do this, it's usually people will say, well, we had our differences, we've sorted them out, or okay, we're taking a step back is super, super impactful.
I really like what you said about the buy-in, basically, of getting the buy-in from people and coming with problem and solution, not only with a problem, because what you really do is you change the role of the person you go to from a problem solver to an advisor, and the role of an advisor is actually a lot more attractive and a lot more interesting because it doesn't require that much time, it doesn't require that much brain power and decision making power. So I really like that one specifically. Now, there's one more question I really wanted to ask you, which is a little bit more into the future, I would say. So let's say you're 80 years old now, you're sitting in your rocking chair and you're looking back at your life and you're seeing how the world has changed, how the world has transformed. Looking back at the point, what is a change that you would really want to see in the world?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. I don't know if so much about change, but when I sort of reflect, and even today when I reflect on my career, I think the thing that I take away, and I hope I'm able to take this away as well when I'm 80 in my rocking chair, is the relationships and the people we've worked with. When I look at it, I think about sort of the initiatives I've been involved in. It's been a lot of my career has been project program focused. We were delivering a lot of, especially early in my career. But what I remember most deeply is not so much, the technology and the project itself. It's more the relationships and the teams and the groups that were built. And some have persevered with time, and especially now, with WhatsApp and what have you, it's so easy to stay connected with people. And what I hope we're all able to take once we're retired and enjoying the good life is memories of the people we worked with, the relationships we've built, those enjoyable moments, those small frictions that happen, and they happen a lot in projects. Nobody really remembers them in the grand scheme of things. They don't really stay forever. What really stays is, who you worked with, how you worked, and also, what you were able to accomplish. It's nice to be able to go back and tell a story. I was involved in my career in the Y2K, which was super stressful for everybody who was in IT and even not in IT. And we like to tell war stories about that time. And we don't talk about, we had this bug or this or that. We talk about, everybody's eating pizza at 11 p.m. trying to get that last piece of code in, That's what you remember. And those are the moments that you save for the rest of your life. So I don't know if it's so much a change, but it's sort of something that I hope I keep. And I hope people in general who have worked with me also have those fond memories like I do. That would be great. That would be an accomplished life, I think.
I like that a lot. I mean, I guess to me, what stands out in what you shared is just in general, in a more sense of like people and the stories and like the memories about them versus, making everything about big problem that's on the plate right now, and and saying, oh, I'm going to make this mistake, so everybody's going to remember me about that, and things like that. So I think, that's really what I take away from this, and I appreciate you sharing that. So, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, having this conversation. We're going to link below this video also to your LinkedIn profile so people can connect as well. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing and for contributing. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was great.